To the curious, the seekers, and the experts, welcome. You're listening to Poli-Psych Podcast. Recently, Americans and people throughout the world have been rather severely challenged by not only a very contagious virus, but by quarantines and so-called lockdowns that have severely limited transportation, shopping, the ability to eat in restaurants and bars. Schools are closed. This event is unprecedented. The nearest thing in our recent history is 9/11, wherein travel was shut down to some extent. But this is far beyond that. To take a look at how it has affected Americans and others, we wanted to chronicle some of the events that have been taking place. We originally recorded on March 18th. And as I speak now, it is March 20th. One significant new development has been the introduction of chloroquine as a virtual cure for coronavirus. I'm going to play a short clip of a video of which chloroquine is the subject. Following that clip, we will take up our discussion from March 18th, beginning with comments from Don.
Not only does it have a cure rate in this peer-reviewed study of 50 out of 50. Let me say that again. They took 50 patients, they gave them this medication, they got rapid cure and total destruction of the virus in 50 out of 50. It's almost unheard of in a medication against a virus. And it also protects the lungs.
I personally have really enjoyed getting a lot of information off of Twitter because I'm just following a lot of accounts that are right on top of it, and I'm not talking about the bickering. I'm talking about people that kind of look at trends and are able to give some concise but very useful information about what they see happening. The first one happens to be from gab.com, and Speak Freely at Get on Gab. Suddenly, everyone is a prepper. Suddenly, everyone supports homeschooling. Suddenly, everyone supports gun rights. Suddenly, everyone supports border control. Suddenly, everyone realizes the Fed can't print money forever. Corona-chan is red-pilling the entire world. And I thought that just put it in a really great, succinct way. And all these things that we, being the people that have been so-called awake for a while and have been wanting America to go in more of a personal responsibility direction and less of a big government and we'll get everything taken care of for you direction. I personally am excited that things are going this way. Having said that, the hoarding is not good. The hoarding is a problem. And I've personally been retweeting people that say, if you had a need for this much toilet paper for 2 weeks, you should have seen a doctor long ago. So let's not get crazy, people. But it will stabilize. Cindy has noted how basically in our recent Costco trip, and by recent I mean yesterday, there were some notable supplies that were lacking, such as toilet paper and big bags of rice. But other than that, we were very pleased with that there weren't fights over anything, and people were very courteous and making jokes about making sure they had enough wine to drink and all that kind of good thing. So this is actually renewing my confidence in America and this transition that we're in. Okay, now one of the things that I am most excited in a positive way about is that, now people don't realize this, that there are actually ulterior motives for declaring a state of emergency. Now, if you're a governor, the obvious one is to get more funds or to get federal help of some kind. But if you're a president, what that does not only gives you, some kind of a recognition on the global stage, but there are laws written that only take effect during times of emergency. And people have noticed just yesterday, I think it was, that Google has flipped. Now, flipped is not exactly the right word, and I'm looking at a post that I saw, I think this morning, but maybe it was posted last night, that it's not that Google has flipped, it's that emergency powers allow the president to declare them a public utility and to seize control. Okay, think about that. People are noticing that Google searches are very different now. And I have a couple of examples that maybe I'll get to a little bit later. I don't want to hog this whole show. But the dynamics of our nation under a state of emergency can be used by patriots, the good guys, to actually take control of things that had been subverting the public good. And so I wanted to make everybody aware of that, because there is a tendency among liberty-minded people, and I'm definitely one of them, that don't want emergencies declared because of the increased power that it gives the federal government, and once they have that power, it very rarely goes away. But if you've got the right people in place who had actually been anticipating and planning for these times, then it's actually a very good thing. And I think, well, more than think, I'm certain that that's what's happening now. So I would encourage everybody to not panic, because these changes that are coming down, with the most important being the decreasing censorship in Google, so that people can actually find out what's really going on. And that's a very, very positive thing. Okay, at that point, I think I'll let you other guys say something before I scroll on down to the rest of the material.
A press conference today, and one of the highlights right at the beginning was the invocation of the Defense Production Act. I'm not familiar with that. I'm just looking at the Wikipedia article, but it seemed to be a fairly significant juncture in this unfolding battle, and it really is a battle. It feels to me like it is an attack. I've sort of been looking at this as a weaponized virus. It doesn't seem like it's an organic occurrence. So with that in mind, I think the response is starting to step into that realm. It's kind of similar to 9/11 in that way. We have civilian casualties and a very murky origin for this whole thing, to the point where it could even be an act of vandalism by an entity in China. It certainly did originate in China. The Chinese theory that that this is a U.S. attack doesn't make any sense, and I think can be dismissed. But I'm not quite ready to dismiss the fact that China's maybe right about the fact that they didn't do it either. So that really opens. I did a tweet on this, just kind of posing that question: is if neither side knows who exactly perpetrated this event, and it does seem to have a point source, then who did? So I'm just setting that aside as a little bit of speculation. Although it may not matter at this point, as we had to kind of adjust to that. But the Defense Production Act establishes a system of priorities and allocations for materials, facilities, authorizes the requisitioning thereof, and opens up, basically, it does boost the power of government. It may support what Don, what you were saying about essentially the militarization of information. And in this case, we do have a friendly executive, a liberty-minded executive in most regards. But the other thing I'll say is I don't see a lot of cohesion on the team. And I don't know, Cindy or Don, if you've noticed this, the press conferences and Body Language Ghost did a very interesting study that I put on Twitter last night. And I'm not sure if they're working always on the same, they may be working at cross purposes. For example, the Powell, the very steep drop in the discount rate, it was almost too much. I think it panicked the market, and to me, it looked like malicious, following an order maliciously. In the days before, in the run-up to that move by Powell, President Trump had been chiding Fed over the interest rate situation. So malicious compliance, I think, is the term used in organizational psychology. And this is the one thing I'm worried about, is how cohesive is that unit around President Trump?
Well, one of the things I'll just interject, Ken, that since a few of us on this team listened to Dave on X22, that he had actually been anticipating that there would be a Fed rate cut of about this magnitude, but on Wednesday, actually today, rather than over the weekend. So I'm not going to say it was anything malicious or intended to panic. And President Trump did give every reason. In fact, I think he even outright said he was very happy about what the Fed did. So there does tend to be, I think, a first wave of panic regarding that. And I think that's what you're seeing, and that's real. So I just wanted to interject that.
I think, Cindy, what do you think? I'm just sensing basically a unified country. There have been some really important concessions that Democrats have made, and there are a number of sacred cows that are being slaughtered, for lack of a better term. The TDS, I think Trump derangement syndrome, it's taken a pretty big hit. I don't think that'll be as much of a factor. I think globalism itself, the concept of borderless, migration of populations, that's going to be out the window. There are a whole raft of things that are just completely turned on their heads culturally. And Cindy, you've studied this a little bit. I've seen some tweets, and the one you did about sports, that's interesting. I mean, there's a whole thing. Every day we're going to wake up to a new raft of adjustments.
Well, I think that one thing that is very significant that's going on is, and I have this graphic on my screen. If you dig a pit for others to fall into, you will fall into it yourself. And I believe that I mean, I think we touched on this in one of our other coronavirus videos. I tend to be fairly well persuaded that what is happening is that some entity or a group of entities has planned for the demise of the global economy, so that they could impose more constraints and prevent President Trump from winning the election. And there's a list as long as our arms, probably, of goals that they had. I do tend to believe that the virus was intentionally introduced. And as we know, and Ken, I think as you tweeted this week, Bill Gates his organization did a run through in October to determine how a virus would spread and so on and so forth. And that was allegedly the blueprint, the map for what has been done with coronavirus. So again, I believe there was a plan of evil people to work mischief and create chaos. At the same time, I believe that there has also been kind of a parallel plan of people who want to restore the world and raise humanity. And this term is so new agey, so forgive me, but heal the earth. The earth, we're not in this group, I don't think we're very concerned about CO2, but we are all three very concerned about other issues of having to do with pollution and not being good stewards of the earth. So we've heard, and I believe that there has been a plan by good people to to repair things, to make things better, to bring forth a better world. And I believe that, ironically enough, this plan of people with bad intentions, I'll go so far as to say evil or wicked intentions, to collapse the economy and various other structures, is being used and has been planned for a long time to be used by those who have good intentions to bring restoration, healing. And to me, I mean, this is one of my favorite Bible concepts, and I don't mean to be, I'm not a vengeful person, but, and it's karmic. Look, you dig a pit for other people to fall into, and you fall into it yourself. In other words, this trap has been set, but the people that it was set for, which is you and me, I mean, ordinary people, we're not falling into it. The people who dug the pit are falling into the pit themselves. And to me, that is at the very center of what's happening right now. And we'll see how everything plays out. I believe there's a good plan. I mean, I know Q says trust the plan. I tend to trust the plan. I hope it all comes into play, because if it doesn't, and we've given over all this authority to civil authorities, we're going to be in deep trouble. But I do trust the plan. So I have that optimism that, yes, the things are going to become better as a result of this change, this transition, and this crisis that we're currently going through.
And Cindy, there's another great feature that when the enemy falls into the pit, when they're in the pit, can't be digging any more new pits. And I'm looking at a cartoon that shows Bill Clinton and George W. Bush and Barack Obama talking about the current situation. Of course, it's fictitious, but Bill Clinton says Trump is sending us all to Gitmo for life, and then Bush says, let's plan another mass shooting, and Obama, the brainiac there, says, we can't. All the schools, restaurants, and theaters are closed. Now, of course, that takes us to a whole new level of understanding what's going on, but I think it's real. I think that if the good guys control the environment, then the bad guys can't create chaos, and I think that's a big part of what's going on.
Another way to look at it, and I try to look at it from different facets, I think we all do here, but is that there are forces behind the players, and we could look at it. We do usually go into a dualistic view, especially with, and this literally is true in the Jungian world, with the value judgment of the feeler. There's the thing we're attracted to or like, and then there's the thing we don't. It's a binary thing. So I'll just use Bill Gates as an example. I'm not sure that he's Dr. Evil, that he's got a plan, that he's got a specific strategy, but he's being influenced by a darker force that's using him and is causing what I would call a perversion of the calling of humanity. And this is a huge biblical theme. When humans assume the powers of God, that usually doesn't end well, and that not ending well can take several different forms. And I think it could be a window to look through into this situation. And the virus itself seems to be propagated in conditions that are unnatural to perhaps to the calling of humanity to be agrarian, to be outdoors, that all the things we associate with health are interestingly on the path of life. The path of life also, we have the problem of abortion. Again, not that there's somebody sitting up in the clouds passing judgment on us. It's just that the deeper plan of God's plan, it encompasses all actions and all motivations, whether people are aware of it or not. And I think that this is why this battle is so, it shakes to the core of almost everything we see, because it is essentially an archetypal formation. We can't see it, but we know it's there. Same with spiritual forces of darkness or spiritual forces of light. We can't see them, but we know they're there. We have faith in the forces of good, and we all three of us follow the Christian path in various forms, and yet we do see I think we all see the common good in other religions when they are in harmony with a plan that points to the light. And when that influence points towards darkness or control or mankind assuming the powers of God, this is what happens. And I think it happened in Wuhan, China. The cat got out of the bag, so to speak. They were tinkering with forces that should not have been tinkered with. The viral lab, it could have been an accident. We don't know. But the bottom line is that it shouldn't have happened in the first place.
Yeah, Ken, I think all three of us tend to agree that what's happening here is a turning of the tables of something that was intended for evil and still can kill people. We don't want to minimize that. But as far as viruses go and as far as lethality goes, we are looking at something that is not anywhere close to the way that the media that's trying to generate panic is a big part of the problem, and we're trying to encourage people not to panic because it may even be that if this lab was if this virus was bioengineered, and my guess is that it was, and I think that's more than a guess, there's a lot of evidence out there, that there is a possibility that there was some tinkering with it done by the good guys so that it is actually much less lethal than it was designed to be. So I'm pretty confident that this is going to peter out fairly soon. Now, whether or not that's just a few weeks or a few months, I don't think it's going to last beyond, say, midsummer. I'll be surprised if it does. And I think that is because that there are possibly, whether it's by design or whether happy accident, it isn't the killer bug that a lot of the media is making it out to be. And one of the things that I want to really hammer again, and there's just a couple of tweets that I want to read with this in mind, so that, as people that are oriented around the psychology of humans, as this team is, we are basically calling out fear and saying that fear is dangerous, at least as dangerous, if not more so, than this virus itself. And there's a couple of tweets by Bill Mitchell that really made that very clear, and I'm just going to read those. He says, 0.006% of China was infected. 0.002% of the U.S. is now infected. The models being used to frighten everyone are using 70 to 80% infection rates, levels which have never been reached in the history of disease. You're being played, America. Right on. And then the second one is, we are in again from Bill Mitchell, at Mitchell VII. We are in a COVID-19 bubble, and as with most speculative bubbles, reality eventually catches up and the bubble collapses. Let's be real. 99% of the fear from COVID-19 comes from what we've been told it will do, will in quotes, because as pandemics go, what it has done, has in quotes, is unimpressive. Again, spot on. And what we want to do is give people a reason to not panic and realize that the panic is really out of control and is being exacerbated really irresponsibly by the mainstream media. That doesn't mean that President Trump is not wise in taking the precautions that he has, because if he's right, and I believe that he is, Ken's been saying he believes it's a weaponized virus. I believe that too. And you definitely don't want to just blow this off as being just another version of the flu. Now, its numbers actually are along those lines, but it has characteristics that are more dangerous. I want to go back to the thing that I noticed about the media that I mentioned earlier, that we're actually getting less censorship now that we have a national emergency. These algorithms at Google are demonstrably different now. And there was a tweet by Jordan Sather that I'll highlight here. He said, "Holy trends, Batman. Look at that spike in hashtag QAnon searches right now. Some sort of major shift has taken place." And he shows a graph that shows a spike right now. And again, that's probably associated with the lifting of censorship. And it's also because people sort of intuitively know that there is something going on here that maybe is not being reported by the mainstream, and most Americans that have heard of QAnon think of that as being a so-called conspiracy theory or something kooky, but people are recognizing that something very momentous is going on, so people are searching out the QAnon stuff. And I'll point out that one of the most famous Q people that is known as Joe M. at Storm is Upon Us has a couple of really interesting tweets that I noticed this morning. And he says, "Hey, you out there, the ones that won't believe conspiracy theories unless Google says so, prepare to forget everything you thought you knew and embark on a fascinating new journey of discovery. Who owns the United States? Google it." And he's got the link. Actually, there's a link below. He's commenting on another tweet, and that other tweet shows a screenshot of that the owners of the United States are the Federal Reserve. And immediately when he said that, I thought of the very famous clip that many people have seen of George Carlin saying, "You have owners, and there's a big club, and you're not in it." And now we know that the name of the big club and that whose owners Americans are is known as the Federal Reserve. And if you're reading between the lines and listening to alternative news, you'll know or suspect that President Trump actually has a plan that's not being spoken openly yet, but I suspect it may be soon, a plan to change the whole Federal Reserve economic structure and make it so that it's not private and hidden the way it is now. So those things are now available to learn on the big search engine Google that was previously privatized, previously controlled by the private entity, but has been basically, because of the national emergency, become public during this time so that Americans can learn the truth and move in a more positive direction for the future. And that's what we're all talking about here, is what this future might look like.
Maybe have more of a lifestyle that what Thomas Jefferson envisioned for Americans was that everybody would have a few acres of farmland and they would produce their own food, more or less. And then in the winter, when it was off season for working on the farm, people would have artistic and creative pursuits, just a more organic type lifestyle, something that serves people and even communities better, certainly families. We hope that you have enjoyed this time. If you have, we ask that you would please click like, subscribe to us on YouTube, subscribe to us on BitChute, certainly follow us on Twitter, and if you have a moment, visit our website. Once again, thanks for joining us. Take care.